You are listening to the Fantasy IPA podcast.
Can't wait. It's time to go eat, baby. Let's eat.
Your audio hangout for the latest intel, projections, and analytics.
Hey, we are playing to win. I'm in a league of my own. They ain't ready for me.
Visit us at fantasyipa.com and follow us on Twitter at fantasy_IPA.
Let's do this.
And welcome to another episode of the Fantasy IPA podcast, where we're really excited to bring you the second in a series of what we're calling the Fantasy Faceoff. Very excited. We've got two very special guests, but before we get to them, I'm going to kick it over to my co-host, Jamie. How you doing?
Doing great. Excited for our second Face-Off. Very happy to have our very special guest here tonight. You can follow me at FIPA_Black. Art, I'll kick it back to you to introduce our very special guest.
All right. And remember to follow me on the site at fantasy_IPA and visit us at www.fantasyipa.com. And we have our first return guest in our second Fantasy Face-Off episode. We have a good friend of the podcast, Doug Bowles from Utter Fantasy. Doug, you want to say hi and tell them where to find you?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me here, guys. The last time I did this with you guys, it was a blast. You can come see my website at www.utter-fantasy.com, where we help everybody try to win their leagues and put up daily content for fun and information. And you can follow me on Twitter at @utterfantasy.
Yeah, and Doug, I just checked out the site earlier this week. And I did notice a pretty good article that everyone out there needs to check out around 10 players getting no respect. So, and once again, as usual, Doug has the best illustrations on the net. So remember to visit him at Utter Fantasy. That brings us to our second guest from DLF. We've got Eric Ollinger. Eric, you want to say hi? Tell them where to find you.
Hi. Like you said, I'm a senior writer for Dynasty League Football and the lead IDP writer. You can find me on Twitter at Olinger, OLINGER, IDP, at Olinger IDP. Pretty active on there, so if you have any questions about IDP or anything fantasy related, or like to talk about Star Wars and Batman, that's where to find me, man.
Yes, and I'm going to take advantage of that. But sometimes the universe talks to us in strange ways, and this time in a good way, because I talked about Doug's article around undervalued players. And if you go check out some of what Eric did, I think a day before, Eric actually released overvalued players. So a good yin and yang. Hopefully we've got two ends of the spectrum coming to the competition tonight. But I'm not going to talk about that, Eric. I want to get to the important stuff. So 2 questions for you. How is the new reboot with J.J. Abrams and the Star Wars series? Are you taken to it, or are you more of the classic guy?
No, man, I was all on board. We were there opening night, of course, and then I actually seen it the first 3 days it was open. Mm-hmm. So seen it the Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and then waited like 3 days and seen it a 4th time. So I seen it 4 times the first week it was open.
I guess you're definitely on board then. Yeah, I thought it was a great flick. Second, very important question: when does Suicide Squad start, and do you already have your tickets?
August 5th is when Suicide Squad starts, but I do not have my tickets yet because they haven't went on sale around Southwest Ohio just yet. So as soon as they do, though, we'll be there opening night for sure.
Very, very nice. Thank you for giving us that insight. Well, as mentioned, this is the second episode of the Fantasy Face-Off. There will be 3 rounds. The first 2 rounds are going to be list style, kind of like Family Feud, where I'll give you a category, and you'll have to name the player, team, or other that fits into that category. Now, there are going to be certain questions where we're going to do a quick knowledge break and get your opinions on player values or situations and so forth. But as we're going through, it's kind of a good way to stop down the competition and get some really good insight from these really great guests that we're having. Within those first 2 rounds, you will have 2 strikes. If you strike out before your opponent will have the chance to complete the list. So it's a very good opportunity for somebody to gain extra points. Each question will be worth, or each answer will be worth 1 point, culminating in the speed round where we've got 7 rapid fire questions that you'll have 30 seconds to answer. All right, you guys will get the hang of it really quickly. All right, first question, and we're going to let Eric start with this one, and we will go back and forth as mentioned before. All right, so six running backs, 6 receivers since 2010, drafted as rookies that posted 1,000 yards in their rookie season. Eric, what's your first guess?
Odell Beckham Jr.
Correct.
Odell Beckham Jr. I think that is a pretty safe pick. And Eric, you're on the board with a point. Doug, you're up next. Who's your guest?
Le'Veon Bell. Nope.
Yeah, really good guess. But Le'Veon Bell, although he posted over 1,000 all-purpose yards, he ended up with 860 yards rushing and 399 yards receiving. So he did not qualify for this particular category. So that gives you your first strike, Doug. So you're kind of on the edge.
All right.
All right. So, Eric, let's go to you with your second guess.
Go with AJ Green.
AJ Green. AJ Green did post 1,000 yards in his rookie season, which was 2011. He had 65 receptions for 1,057 yards. So actually squeezed in there with a 1,000-yard season as a rookie. All right, that brings us back to you, Doug. What is your next guess?
DeAndre Hopkins.
Wow.
No,
Yes, DeAndre Hopkins. Once again, he was close at 800, but he did fall short. Did have good reception numbers there, or actually 52 receptions. But I think the biggest thing holding DeAndre back was Andre Johnson, the target hog, in his rookie year. All right, so that gives you your second strike, Doug, and we're going to move back over to Eric. Eric, what is your next guess?
Went with AJ last time. We'll stay in that same draft and take a shot with Julio.
Close, but not quite.
I thought he might have fallen just short.
Yeah, Julio Jones, just short is absolutely right at 959 yards in his 2011 season. All right, Doug, big opportunity for you to build a good lead for this round. I'm sorry, Eric. So, Eric, do you have another guess?
Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah, so Kelvin Benjamin is correct. And this also brings up one of our school breaks where we're looking to get some knowledge from our analysts. So I'll ask you guys each the same question, and please feel free to answer freely. So Kelvin Benjamin returning from injury, Funchess is now in the mix. So, dynamics over there have changed. They're very successful as an offense without Benjamin. So where do you see Kelvin Benjamin finishing now and moving forward? I'm actually going to break this into 2 sections. Eric, we'll start with you. Where do you have Kelvin Benjamin from a dynasty standpoint?
From a dynasty standpoint, I have Kelvin Benjamin ranked solidly into the wide receiver 2 category. So somewhere in the 15 to 25 range. He wasn't ultra efficient his rookie year, and he was kind of he benefited a lot from just volume. So that year, it was basically just him and Greg Olsen doing it by themselves. And that was the year that Cam Newton had the auto accident. That, he had the cracked vertebra in his back, and it was him and Derek Anderson going back and forth at the quarterback spot. And Benjamin performed better, actually, with Anderson than he did Newton, which is a bit of a head scratcher. But last offseason, before the ACL injury, there was nothing but glowing reports, which, in the offseason tends to kind of be the thing anyways. But, there was a lot of positive vibes around Benjamin improving and, working on his hands and cutting down on drops. So Benjamin seems to be a target on Twitter. Like, everybody seems to hate him. But he's a guy that I would very happily have on my dynasty rosters, and I have no issues with drafting as a wide receiver 2 in redraft, this year. So I think Funchess is the clear third option there. and it's going to be Greg Olsen and Kelvin Benjamin, especially in the red zone where, if Cam's not keeping it for himself, I think Benjamin's height and catch radius is, where really you're going to hit pay dirt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that, Eric. How about you, Doug? What's your take on Kelvin Benjamin?
Well, I specialize more in the standard leagues, and I agree with Eric where he put him in dynasty leagues. And standard, I would lower him actually a little bit more because, when he went down with injury, we're looking at the Carolina team. We're going, who's he going to throw to? And Cam made it work. He made it work with Corey Brown and Ted Ginn Jr. And so Cam sort of learned how to spread it around a little bit, So this first year, I have hunches. I'm more of I want to see it before I believe it kind of guy. So dynasty, sky's the limit. But this year, I got him like past 20 easily.
So you're past 20 and possibly in the wide receiver 3 conversation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not that I don't think he's going to have a great year. It's just if you're picking him in the 2, you're passing up some people that you probably have more safer is the word.
Yeah.
That you'd be passing on.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks for that, guys. Let's move on. And Eric, it's back to you to see if you can complete this list. Who's your next guest?
Oh man, there's no way I'm going to complete this list. Was Eddie Lacy one?
Yes, he was.
Yes, Eddie Lacy in 2013, in just 15 games, mind you, rushed for 1,178 yards. Actually had 11 touchdowns, so very, very strong year for Eddie Lacy. All right, another school bell, so we're going to stop down to drop some knowledge, guys. So Eddie Lacy, down year by all accounts. He was, in PPR, he was actually outproduced by James Starks. James Starks saw a really big workload considering he came in as the backup. Now, Eddie Lacy has been working on some P90X to get those pounds down. He's in a contract year. So let's start with you, Doug, on this one. Are you buying or selling Eddie Lacy at his current value?
I'm buying. He says he's going to be fit, and I believe him, and hopefully he will be. But I would put him a number 2 RB that you would want to get early.
All right, and what's your take on it, Eric?
He's a lottery ticket, man. Like, he's a scratch off. Somebody if you can get, for really cheap. He might pay dividends, but he's kind of damaged goods, and it's if I'm drafting today, I'm gonna probably take the safe side and not invest where his current price tag's at. Like, somebody will like him more than me. On the other hand, if we get into training camp and it actually looks like that he's taking his weight serious and he shows up in shape and he's metaphorically hungry and not literally hungry, then that's when I'm going to jump back on the bandwagon. But right now, I'm too hesitant. The running back position is too volatile to be gambling on a running back 1 to take somebody that could very easily fall flat, and then you have to reach a couple rounds earlier than you need to grab James Starks just to cover your butt, and that's kind of where I'm at with him.
I thought I was being safe last year with Marshawn Lynch, and then you have some running back like Jonathan Stewart come out of nowhere and have his kind of year. It's a funny position. It's almost a gamble no matter what.
Yeah, and I think I tend to agree with you, Doug. We had a podcast earlier where my stance on Eddie is, I think to your point, I think he's going to be putting it out there and trying to get some production in this contract year. If I can grab him cheap now, grab him. But as soon as his value peaks, I'm probably trying to move him because when you're talking about work ethic and commitment to the game, I think that once he's paid, I'd be very, very worried that he'll fall back to old habits. But let's move on. So another correct answer for you, Eric. Who's your next guess?
The one running back I know was Jeremy Hill for the Bengals.
Football questions.
Let's break it down, guys. Down year for Jeremy Hill in 2015. The Bengals just signed Gio to another extension or a 3-year contract. Huge Hugh Jackson leaves for Cleveland. So almost the same question as Eddie Lacy. Where do you guys stand on Jeremy Hill? Let's break it down again in the same manner. Doug, you can take redraft, but we're going to start with Eric from a Dynasty's perspective. Where do you have Jeremy Hill?
Lower than Eddie Lacy.
Yeah.
Jeremy Hill, I don't know if expectations just got out of hand after his rookie season. And then last year, I think it's probably it's closer to what we're actually going to get moving forward with Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill sharing the backfield. I think that they kind of want to split that workload fairly evenly. Hill is basically the goal line guy, so he's going to be touchdown dependent, and Gio really picks up a lot of value in the PPR leagues. So, like I mentioned when I was talking about Lacy, the running back position is so volatile right now, in redraft and in dynasty, to where some guys that like Jeremy Hill are going to hold value, but you're gonna have it's a weekly roll of the dice. If he doesn't score a touchdown, you're kind of falling on your sword. Basically, you're not going to get any points. But Jeremy Hill's that guy that can get 10 carries for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns, and maybe he catches a pass or two. If you're willing to roll the dice on Lacy and he gets too expensive, on the flip side, you could probably go acquire Jeremy Hill for pennies compared to Lacy. And while he probably doesn't have the upside based on the Packers wanting Lacy to be the feature back, Lacy kind of offers you that strong flex play or that mid-level RB2 on a weekly basis. So he's not a guy that I've completely checked out on, but definitely had to recalibrate my expectations on him.
Yeah, and the way you described him, Eric, I think with those 2-3 touchdown games, maybe a good target in those best ball leagues, and his price is still pretty suppressed over there. But Doug, what are your thoughts on Jeremy Hill as far as redraft?
I like him as a number 2. Every single year not every single year, but like for the last couple of years, we've been expecting Gio to be this dynamic number 2 there, and he doesn't ever end up being that guy. I don't even draft him anymore. So that's Gio, because they'll give the ball to Jeremy a lot more than a 50-50 split, and so I like him, but I'm with Eric, and just that he's below Eddie Lacy, and he's another gamble.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for the knowledge there, guys. We're going to move on. All right, Eric. So we still have 4 running backs, and
we have 4 running backs and 3 receivers.
All right. So Eric, what's your next guess?
Have I guessed Keenan Allen yet?
You haven't. Is that your guess? I'll take
Keenan Allen. Yes, I'll take Keenan Allen.
Good guess.
Yes, Keenan Allen in 2013, at the tender age of 21, posted a 71 reception season for 1,046 yards. All right, Eric, you're definitely on a roll. Who is your next guess?
See, 2 years ago, that rookie class was nuts. So I know it took Beckham. Mike Evans. Let's go with Mike Evans.
There you go.
Mike Evans in 2014, that very stacked class, which I'll refer to in just a moment, but he did post 68 receptions for 1,051 yards and 12 touchdowns. Very, very solid rookie year. So you've got 5 of the 6 receivers gone, and there are still 3 running backs left. Eric, can you name them?
I'm a risk on this one. Amari Cooper. Did Cooper hit it?
Yeah, so we did name all the receivers. Nice job. At 72 receptions, 1,070 yards. Eric, you're doing a great job here. We've got 4 running backs left. Do you have a guess in that category?
Doug Martin.
Very good.
Doug Martin is correct. He actually had a pretty solid season in that he posted on 319 carries, 1,454 yards, and he also caught 49 passes for 472 yards. He was definitely propped up by that stretch of games where he tore up the Raiders and so forth. But Doug Martin is a correct answer. All right, man. 3 more running backs.
Like I'm 99% sure he finished with like 900 and some change. But before he fell off the map, did Trent Richardson hit it or not? I'll take a guess with Trent Richardson, but I'm not very confident in that one. Close though, right?
Close. Yes, very close with 950 yards.
Did Gurley hit it last year? I was thinking that because of his late start that he missed it.
Todd Gurley hit it 1,106 yards on 229.
I don't know about the year, but was Alfred Morris within the 2010 window?
He was, and that is the right answer.
Alfred Morris did hit it in 2012, and he was actually our biggest producer with 1,600 yards.
Yeah.
I remember he blew up out of nowhere, but I couldn't remember if he was a rookie within that window.
Yep. Yeah, and then the last one was LeGarrette Blount, who that one I didn't expect anyone to get, but in 2010 with Tampa Bay, LeGarrette Blount put up 1,007 yards, and he actually had a very good average at 5 yards a carry. So now that we've wrapped up the running backs, I do have a quick question for you guys. You know, over those 6 years, on average, we did have one running back post 1,000 yards, and actually, for the most part, they were one per year. If you had to put your money on a running back to post 1,000 yards in 2016, who is it? And I'm not going to let you choose Zeke. So other than Zeke, rookie running back that's going to post 1,000 yards if you had to put money on it. Let's start with you, Doug.
Maybe Rawls goes down in week 2 and Prosy goes crazy. I don't know. I'll say Prosy. I don't know.
Yeah, CJ Prosise, very popular pick. How about you, Eric?
I'll take Kenyon Drake in Miami. I don't really trust Jay Ajayi's knees all that well, and I don't think the Dolphins do either. So unless they can get their hands on a guy like Arian Foster or something, you know, it would take an injury to Ajayi. But I think Kenyon Drake has the talent to step in and do that.
Interesting. I think if that happens, I'm going to pull up this recording and play it for everybody because that is a very, very bold prediction. I like that. So you heard it here first from Eric. Kenyon Drake, 1,000 yards in his rookie year.
Well, about this time last year, I was tooting the Darren McFadden horn, and everybody laughed at me. So, you know, there's plenty of audio footage out there. I'd love to play for a few people.
Very cool. Well, that's going to do it for round 1. We're going to move to round 2. And once again, this is going to be list style, and we're going to give you the 2 strikes. But the category here, 2015, there were 12 running backs who finished with 500 or more rushing yards and 300 or more receiving yards. A little bit of a dual threat theme here. Doug, let's start with you. Do you have a guess for us?
Adrian Peterson.
I think you're getting unlucky here. Yeah, and so Adrian Peterson, even though he finished as the second back in PPR, it was heavily based on that 1,400 or almost 1,500 rushing yards, but he just fell short at 222 receiving yards. So sorry, Doug. Let's move over to Eric. Eric, what's your first guess?
D'Angelo Williams.
Yes, sir.
Yes, D'Angelo Williams, and the impressive thing here is he did it in only 10 games in relief of Le'Veon Bell. But D'Angelo Williams did post 907 yards rushing and 367 yards receiving. So he slipped in on the receiving mark. Let's move to you, Doug. Who's your next guess?
We'll get that buzzer ready.
Come on, Doug. You got it.
Ingram.
Good job, Doug.
All right. Mark Ingram on the board. Similar to D'Angelo, Mark Ingram did it in, 10 games started. He did post 769 yards, and on the strength of 50 receptions, 405 yards. So Mark Ingram is a correct answer there. Let's kick it back to you, Eric. Who you got?
Chris Johnson.
Chris Johnson ended up with 814 yards, but this is surprising to me because he only caught 6 passes for 58 yards. Is that correct? That's what I'm showing here. But yeah, super surprising to me. Chris Johnson did not make the list. So, Eric, that gives you your first strike. Let's kick it over to you, Doug.
Well, Doug Martin was number 3 running back last year, and I don't think it was all yards, so I'm going to go with him. Don't buzz me on that one.
I don't want to.
No!
But I have to.
Oh, Doug Martin. Very strong season. You're right. He finished number 4 in PPR, but with 1,400 yards and 33 receptions, He ended up with 271 yards, so he did just miss the 300-yard mark. All right, Eric, let's go to you.
Justin Forsett? No way.
Yeah, we were actually talking about Justin for. Actually, I guessed that when Jamie posed this to me. But while Justin Forsett did hit the 640-yard mark in rushing, and he caught 31 passes. So back to the very low efficiency as far as catches. On those 31 catches, he only posted 153 yards. So Justin Forsett, he probably would have hit it if he had stayed healthy, but he did not hit it. Yeah, let's keep going. Let's give him a third strike. Let's kick it over to you, Doug. Who's your next guess?
If this next guy is wrong, I'm going to eat this flashlight. Matt Forte had to have done both.
Oh, Doug, you're right.
No.
You're right. and guess what, Doug? You got the classroom buzzer on this one too. Art has a special question.
Time to drop some knowledge, guys. So, in New York with Chan Gailey, Bilal Powell still there as people are seeing as the pass catching option. They brought in Curie Robinson. So, first time Forte has not been in Chicago, but will this be Forte's first year not to finish as an RB1? Let's start with you, Doug. Do you think Forte keeps up his PPR RB1 streak, or does he finally fall out?
He keeps it up. They're a running team first, so with Bowles as their head coach was no relation, and I like Forte in New York a lot. I think he just keeps on rolling.
Yeah, he's definitely been a very, very consistent talent over the years, especially in PPR. Where are you at on Matt Forte, Eric?
If his streak continues, I think he's going to squeak in at the bottom end of it. And it's probably more just because, kind of beating a dead horse. The running back market is just so diluted. I don't think that there's a lot of people that are behind him that's ready to kick him out of the top 12. So I think that, he's going to take a step back, but I still think he'll probably be in that 10 to 12 range. I just worry because last year what we've seen with Ivory and Powell, alternating series or, even quarters at times, Powell and Forte bring an awful similar skill set to the field. So I think that there's going to be times where the hot hand just stays on the field and, name value is not really going to carry any weight in New York coming from Chicago. Forte, like I said, I don't see anybody ready to jump in front of him and push him out of the top 12. So I think he'll maintain, low end RB1 numbers.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I think he's, in best ball leagues, I'm seeing him as a pretty good value. I'm seeing him go, 4th, 5th round. So Forte might be someone you guys want to target in those best ball leagues and maybe even the redraft leagues. All right. So, Doug, you hit with Matt Forte. Eric, do you have another guess?
Devontae Freeman?
Yes. Time to drop some knowledge again, guys. And it's funny how you guys are getting these follow-up questions in clusters. But Devonta Freeman, there's been talk of a workload reduction with Tevin Coleman, the sophomore out of there. Last year, Devonta Freeman finished as the top running back, anchored by some ultra-productive stretches earlier in the year. He's going right now, I think, in Dynasty and in redraft or best ball in the mid to late second round. So let's see. Do you guys think Freeman will finish as a top 5 running back in PPR this year? Let's start with you, Eric.
I would bet anything that he will not finish a top 5 running back. I'm not confident in with Freeman repeating those numbers. There's already talk about getting Coleman a lot of touches this year, and Freeman, I think, was a victim of circumstance where he was as hot as anybody in the history of the league for a few weeks last year. But if you look at his numbers over the last, I think it was like 5 or 6 games, he averaged like 3.1 yards per carry. It was something really, really low. and he really hit a wall. So I don't think that he's built to maintain that sort of workload over the whole season. And the Falcons, I mean, their record wasn't even good. So I think that they're going to, I think they're really going to split that backfield up and get Coleman a lot of work. And Freeman's still going to have value, but anybody that's drafting him as a top 5 running back is going to be extremely disappointed.
Yeah, so according to Eric, pass on him at his current value. Doug, what are your thoughts on Devonta Freeman?
Almost exactly what Eric said. I got red flags about that guy, Coleman, and perhaps a fluky season that he did so well. I'm with you guys on that.
All right, Doug. Who's your next guess?
I'm going to guess C.J. Anderson.
C.J. Anderson. Let's see where he ended up finishing.
I know he split time with Hillman, but I would have thought he hit those numbers.
Yeah, he did hit the rushing mark at 720, but fell short in the receiving game at 183. And I think part of it was him splitting time, even a very, very big workload reduction, I think, because of the early injuries. But C.J. Anderson did not hit those marks. So let's kick it back over to you, Eric. Who is your next guess?
I missed with Chris Johnson. Let's try David Johnson.
Yes, David Johnson. And I think your apprehension was the fact that they really didn't give him the ball much early, but he did squeeze in at 581 yards rushing. But in the passing game, he kind of destroyed it on 36 receptions with 457 yards receiving. So really good guess. Eric, let's keep it going. Can you finish us up?
I get
Gio.
There you go. Got him.
Yes, Giovanni Bernard. Surprising to me, too, but he did have 730 yards rushing. And as you know, he is that passing threat. He did log 472 yards receiving. Let's keep it going, Eric. You're on a roll. Who's your next guest?
I don't know if he got enough playing time to hit the numbers. What about Dion Lewis in New England?
Yeah, I think your concerns are correct. But Dion Lewis, I'm pretty sure he hit the receiving mark, but I'm not sure if he reached 500 yards rushing. I don't have him listed here because he did not complete the season. But
let me do it. But even though I'm out.
Yeah. Feel free to try to complete it out, guys. So, Doug, you got some more guesses?
Did we say McFadden?
We didn't, but Doug, you were right. Darren McFadden did.
Eric, you didn't listen to your own video from last year, but Darren McFadden, I was surprised on that one.
I didn't think he hit the receiving numbers on it. I knew he hit 1,000 yards, but I didn't think he had the receiving numbers.
Yeah, he actually had 40 receptions for 328 yards. That's Darren McFadden. Any other guesses there? Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, just for that Dion Lewis. He nailed the receiving, but the rushing, he only ran 49 times for 234 yards. But over 7 games, he put up some great numbers, but didn't quite get the 500 yards rushing.
Did we say Gurley?
No, we didn't say Gurley, but
he didn't hit the receiving numbers, did he?
No, Gurley did not hit the receiving numbers.
No, but he was close. He was at 188.
I do great at close. I do great. If
what about Lamar Miller?
First question would have been 868 yards. That would have been fabulous.
Eric, Lamar Miller did, yes.
Lamar Miller right now is going as a top 5 running back, probably in Dynasty and redraft. So let's start with you, Eric. What are your thoughts on Lamar Miller? For you, let's gear it towards Dynasty.
Well, from Dynasty, he's definitely a guy that you want to try to get your hands on now. Historically, he's a guy that I haven't really been high on. In Miami, I was never really much of a fan. I was kind of some of the supporting cast, a lot of the offensive line, just kind of the coaching staff. And the fact that he never had more than 19 carries in a game. And I don't think that he broke that 19 carry threshold last year, but I know going into last year, he never had more than 19 carries. And that coaching staff was always hesitant to really lean on him. But now that he's in Houston, Bill O'Brien's not going to hesitate to kind of use him as the new Arian Foster. I don't think he's anywhere near as talented as Arian Foster, but with Osweiler and Hopkins and Will Fuller and Braxton Miller, there's enough speed and playmakers to spread the field where I think Lamar Miller is really going to step in and take that workload and be more efficient with the touches that he gets. So even if he doesn't start getting, 25 touches a game or 22 touches a game, I think that he'll just be more efficient, and he really does belong in that top 5 dynasty running back ranking.
Yeah, and he going into last year, he did not have more than 19 carries. He did have one game last year where he had exactly 20 carries. It was against Baltimore, and he did very well, 113 yards rushing on those 20 carries. So he's probably a guy that, for whatever reason, people think he's going to break down, but that's not always the case with guys, like LaShawn McCoy's size or anything. So, Miller seems like one of those guys that when he gets those carries, he's going to put up those numbers. And Eric, last year, that one time they've given him 20 carries, he had 113 yards. And it makes you wonder why they didn't do it more often. But
yeah, Doug, do you have a different take, or do you agree with what Eric and Jamie are putting forth?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was reading an article the other day and how frustrated he said he was in Miami, that, he couldn't get the number of carries that he wanted every single game. And in Houston, like Eric said, O'Brien's going to give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's excited for him, and I'm with them on that.
Doug Martin did not do it, but believe it or not, Charles Sims did.
Charles Sims.
Yeah.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought he'd have got the rushing part of it.
Exactly.
I wouldn't either. So how many are left that we haven't guessed?
3. Well, the guy you missed on was Justin Forsett, and Javoris Allen came in barely at 514 yards rushing and 353 yards receiving.
And he just barely
would have guessed that.
Yeah. So there are 2 more, and one of them somebody mentioned in the first round.
Starks.
Yes. James Starks, who had 600 yards rushing, 392 yards receiving, which leaves the last one, which a little bit surprising to me. Yeah, DeMarco Murray was the last answer at 702 yards and 322 yards receiving.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed on the receiving part. Always brought in a third down back like Sproles or Matthews.
Yeah, I think one takeaway as we pull up on this one, guys, is I know a lot of fantasy players right now are moving to the pass catching running backs, and if you don't catch passes, there's a perception that you can't be elite. But 13 of the top 24 running backs had less than 300 yards receiving. I think you guys called out quite a few of them, like Adrian Peterson, Doug Martin, Todd Gurley.
Yeah.
But in a league where everyone is really coveting those pass-catching backs, I think there's still some sneaky value to be had to those ground grinders out there. But that's going to do it for round 2, which is going to bring us to our speed round. And Jamie, do you have a current count?
It is 16.
16-2. All right, so effectively, the speed round with the 7 correct answers may not be able to get you there, Doug, but we're going to run through this anyways. All right, Doug, so in the speed round, I'm going to name the player, and your job is to name the team that player had their best fantasy season with.
Okay.
All right, Jamie, let me know when you've got 30 seconds on the clock.
30 seconds on the clock now.
Ricky Williams.
San Francisco.
Reggie Bush.
Miami.
Brandon Marshall.
Chicago.
Terrell Owens.
San Francisco.
Randy Moss.
Minnesota.
Anquan Bolden.
Arizona.
Drew Bledsoe.
Patriots.
That does it.
just
Please
gotta.
tell me that doesn't mean I got them all wrong.
No. That was just.
That's the timer going off. But let me go through
I have
them.
buzzers in my sleep.
Yeah, so before we bring on Eric, I'll just give you the answers real quick, Doug. We had Ricky Williams with Miami, Reggie Bush with Detroit, Brandon Marshall with Chicago, you got, Terrell Owens with San Francisco, you got, Randy Moss with New England, you got, Anquan Bolden with Arizona, you got, and then Drew Bledsoe. Actually, I don't remember who you answered there.
I said Patriots.
Yes, you did get the Patriots. So, very cool. I'm going to bring Eric back on. Hey, Eric, we got you back.
I can hear you.
All right. The bad news is Doug scored an astounding 20 points on only 7 questions. So
That's talent.
so you've got to get all 7 of these to get it correct. But no, really, are you ready for the speed round where I'm going to give you the name of a player, and what I'd like for you to do is tell me which team they played for when they had their most productive fantasy season.
Okay.
You'll have 30 seconds, and I'm going to give you 7 names. Just tell me which team they played for when they had their best fantasy season. Jamie, you got 30 seconds on the clock?
I have 30 seconds on the clock.
All right. So as soon as Jamie says go, I'll give you your first name, and we'll keep going from there.
Go.
Ricky Williams.
The Dolphins.
Reggie Bush.
The Dolphins.
Brandon Marshall.
The Jets.
Terrell Owens.
49ers.
Randy Moss.
The Vikings. Oh, no. New England.
Anquan Bolden.
The Cardinals.
And Drew Bledsoe. Go ahead and give us your guess on Drew Bledsoe.
The Bills.
It's actually New England. So, to wrap up the round, Ricky Williams was with Miami. You got that correct. Reggie Bush was actually with Detroit. And then Brandon Marshall was with Chicago. And, after you said Reggie Bush with Miami, I was thinking, gosh, you could actually guess Miami on all 3 of these guys.
Yeah, I know. That's why I kind of chuckled. I'm like, man, this one hell of just a mind trick,
Yeah, we weren't messing with you that bad, or maybe we were on a lower level. But Terrell Owens, you got right with San Francisco. Randy Moss was actually with New England in that record-breaking season with 23 touchdowns. You actually ended up getting that, but for the game, you did say Minnesota. Anquan Bolden was correct with Arizona, and then Drew Bledsoe with New England is also correct. All right, so Jamie, do we have a final tally?
Okay, 19-7. By the way, Eric, it was 15, not 16 to the first 2. I messed up. But 19-7 was the total.
Yeah, congratulations, Eric. You'll be moving on to the next round. All right, so that's going to do it for another episode of the Fantasy IPA podcast and the Fantasy Faceoff. Our friend Eric Olinger from DLF will be moving on to the next round. But I did want to thank both of our guests. Really enjoyed having you on. Really had fun unearthing these very difficult questions that we hit you with. So let's start with you, Doug. Any parting words for the audience?
Congratulations, Eric. And I wish we were playing for close calls because I would have won.
Yes, so we are not playing horseshoes. But Eric, how about any closing words for the crew and the audience?
I had a blast, man. I really appreciate you guys asking me to come on and do this. Doug, it was nice meeting you. Jamie Hart, I really, really like this format, this podcast. It was a lot of fun, man. Glad I get to come back. Just got lucky, man. Just got lucky.
Good luck in the next round, Eric.
Thank you. I expect my huge paper check to be in the mail, right? I got to win at least 4 digits, right?
Absolutely, but I don't think it'll fit in a mailbox because we use the big publishers clearinghouse type. So
that's what I want. So that's
There
cool.
you go. Well, that's going to do it for the second episode of the Fantasy Face-Off, brought to you by Fantasy IPA. Please visit us on iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review. Jamie, any closing words for the audience?
No, just thanks to our listener again for tuning in, and thanks a lot, guys. It's always awesome to have you guys as guests. Anytime we can return the favor, definitely let us know.
Thanks for inviting me, Jamie and Arthur. You guys are so great.
Yeah, and thank you guys once again. This has been, I would echo what you said, Eric, that it's a very, very fun exercise, and there's a lot of eye-opening things, and most of all, hopefully the audience enjoyed the way you guys brought the knowledge as well as those school break tidbits. So that's going to do it for this episode. Once again, make sure you visit us at www.fantasyipa.com. And until next time, make sure you get you some IPA.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy IPA podcast. Visit us at fantasyipa.com and follow us on Twitter at fantasy_IPA.
Hail to the king, baby. To the house, baby.
Please subscribe and review at iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Call trust. That's called trust.
See you next time, and until then, make sure you get you some IPA.
Come get some. Get some. Get some. Get some. We just want to say thank you for all the love.
And we're out.